Hello everybody and welcome back to Sweet and Sour Soccer. And guys, it is week 21 of Premier League predictions, which I really find weird saying this year because from the majority of teams, it's their 20th match of the season, but it is classed as game week 21. Guys, quick apologies for us not doing our Premier League predictions last week. I know a lot of our regulars do enjoy them on a weekly basis. Unfortunately, we just couldn't make it work last week. We were both very, very busy, but we are back and that's the main thing. And guys, before I jump into the video, as always, do me a favor, hit that like button. And if you are new, please hit that subscribe button as well. And let's get into these Premier League predictions. And we start off with a very, very big game. Liverpool taking on Chelsea. Now, at the start of the season, if I told you guys that this was going to be 9th versus 10th, you probably would ask, what have I taken? Or am I drunk? What's going on? Because you just wouldn't have expected it, would you? I know like a lot of Liverpool fans were very confident going into the start of the season, even though they had lost Mane. And I don't know about Chelsea. I think there was a feeling that this was going to be perhaps a bit of a rebuilding period, especially under new owners. But I don't think they would have really said it would be this bad. I think both teams, this is a massive, massive game for them because as it currently stands, they sit 10 points off the top four. If they're going to have any chance of getting into the Champions League next season, they really are going to have to start to close that gap and pick up some form. And they come up against each other at a time where both just aren't really in a good position. I mean, Chelsea, for me, they need a lot of additions and they need to basically craft into Graham Potter's style of play if he is going to be the long-term manager. And I think it's going to be a bit of a rebuilding project. And the same can be said for Liverpool. I think you look at their midfield. I think they should have signed a couple of midfielders, maybe a couple of transfer windows ago now. We've been going on about Liverpool with their aging squad for quite a while, and I think it really is starting to hit them. As this game goes, though, I think it's going to be pretty even. I don't see a massive scoreline deficit either way. And I am going to go straight down the middle. I'm going to go 1-1. Let's talk about Leicester taking on Brighton now. And Leicester, just before the World Cup, things were looking quite good. But then returning after the World Cup, things not looking so good. Leicester fans are not really sure who to blame, actually. Of course, the owners have been really, well respected around Leicester. They've done a lot for the community. But sadly, as of late, especially after obviously the horrible incidents that happened and, the owner effectively becoming the former owner's son, the spending hasn't quite been there. The investment hasn't been quite there. And although there is frustration with Brendan Rodgers, I think in some regards people are saying, well, Rodgers hasn't really had the funding over the last few seasons. It does mean that Leicester find themselves in a bit of a pickle. The same can't be said about Brighton. A lot of people, me included, did think that when Potter left, Brighton would start a little bit of a downward spiral, but not too much. But, just not in and around those European competitions. Well, they've proved me wrong. They're going on such fine form. And the football they're playing, I'm really enjoying watching Brighton, honestly. I think they're looking absolutely incredible. They're playing with such flair and it's just a joy to watch. I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be probably a close game just because it is at the King Power. But I am going to go for the away team and I'm going to go for a narrow 2-1 victory in this one. Let's move on to speaking about Southampton, who take on Aston Villa. And Southampton, what a resurgence. I think it was 6 straight league defeats that Southampton had amassed. And then over the course of a week, they've got 2 cup wins. And then they followed that up with a Premier League win. And suddenly, although they do sit at the foot of the table, things are starting to look a little bit more up. There's a bit more of an upward feeling. Of course, they've brought in a couple of signings as well, which, of course, is going to help over the course of the season. And it does look that possibly Nathan Jones is starting to put his foot on the team effectively. So the same could be said for Aston Villa. Obviously, they are finding themselves in some good form, apart from the FA Cup incident which happened. But I think Villa fans won't mind too much about that because things are looking really up in the league and they are looking more upward rather than downwards. They'll be bringing in a few signings. I think a couple already confirmed over the January transfer window. But when it comes to this game, I think it's going to be a close game, especially with it being at St Mary's. I think there's going to be a good feeling around that ground. And I think Villa might be in for a little bit of a tough afternoon. I think there's going to be goals in this one. I have a feeling that this is going to be a draw, and I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. I think there's going to be goals. Guys, this is for me is probably the biggest game of the weekend, and whoever loses this might lose their job. It really could. A growing pressure coming from both sides. West Ham, they came to my team, Wolves, on the last weekend, and really surprised just how down the West Ham fans felt. Fair play to them when they usually come. They're usually one of the loudest, make a good atmosphere, get behind the team. There was chants kind of mocking the players, kind of saying, like, cheering when they were passing the ball, comments about how rubbish we must be if we're only drawing to them away from when they're away from home at the time. They were, of course, drawing at the time. Everton, the same can be said, ugly scenes that we're seeing. It just seems like things are really boiling up. Obviously, we saw some certain amount of the fan base, a really small minority targeting players, and it's probably just not helping with the overall atmosphere. They also did a sit-in protest, which I think went, fairly respectable as well, from that side at least. But this is a massive, massive game. And to be honest, I think whichever team manages to get the first goal goes on and wins it, because whoever gets this first goal, it'll uplift their fans. And I think for the opposite, it'll put a massive downplay. And that's going to have a massive, massive difference. I don't know about this one. I just have a funny feeling that the home team will just edge it. Things just really don't look great for Everton at the moment, and still no clear ambition when it comes to spending in January. I'm going to say 2-0 West Ham, because I think whoever gets the first goal goes on to win it, as I said. Bournemouth now taking on Nottingham Forest, and there's no love lost between these two. Of course, it was Bournemouth who got the upper hand at the end of last season when they got that win. I think it was 2 games for the end, wasn't it? Which basically meant that they went up through automatic promotion and meant that Forest had to go through the playoffs. Of course, Forest fans now will look back on that and they won't care at all, because it did ultimately mean that they still went on, they won the playoffs and went up. Now, for a large part of the season, Bournemouth have found themselves above Nottingham Forest in the league, but that can't be said now after results last week. Bournemouth continuing on a downward spiral and Forest picking up a little bit of momentum. One concern, though, for Forest is obviously Dean Henderson, who has unfortunately got an injury for them and will be out for a month or 2, maybe. So Forest are potentially looking at replacements for him, because they, at the moment, will have to be used Wayne Hennessy, and there's some deliberation there over whether he's, the kind of keeper at his age that you're going to want, and with his experience, is he going to be enough to kind of, keep them going on that good form? Bournemouth, they really need to turn things around. I think they're bringing in a £20 million winger. So that's obviously great news for them. We know that they've got new owners and will start to spend, hopefully, for them anyway. It will be enough to keep them up and kind of turn things around. I think this is going to be a really close game between the two teams. Bournemouth are at home. I'm going to go straight down the middle, and I'm going to call a very boring 0-0 here. Guys, moving on to Crystal Palace taking on Newcastle. And Palace find themselves not in trouble yet, but if they continue on their current form, of course, they have got to play Man United. The video will be out just before that game, actually. So I don't know the conclusion of that. But they're in pretty dire form, Palace. They need to really start picking things up, or they could find themselves starting to get pulled in to that relegation battle. But they are a few points clear at the moment, so nothing too much to worry about. Newcastle, on the other hand, the complete opposite could be said. They keep on continuing to win. And even when they didn't have it easy, like the weekend, for example, it did look like it was going to be a very, very tough game against Fulham, who were very resilient, a very good opponent. They've just got that momentum where they're just, they're getting the wins even, for example, getting a draw against Aston when they had to fight really hard for that. Things are just going well. And, they're just building on that momentum, that fighting spirit, and things are just, things are going great for them. Could it be a top 4 push? Well, they'll probably look at this as a result that they want to obviously win and get the 3 points against the Palace team not performing too well. And I think we will do that. I'm going to go for Newcastle in this one, and I'm going to say 2-0. We move on now to my club, Wolverhampton Wanderers, who will be taking on Man City, and a massive, massive win for my team, Wolves. And to be fair, against West Ham. And it was celebrated almost like we'd won a trophy or something. It meant that much to the fans. But now comes a really hard test. Back-to-back league games against Man City, followed by Liverpool. And of course, Man City, I think they'll have a bit of a fight about them, won't they? Of course, we know that they come against Tottenham in midweek. Of course, I don't know the outcome of that result yet. But after the real hard done by feeling that they probably have after the Manchester derby, they'll be really wanting to get a good run of form now. And Pep usually does pick up good form around this time of the year. This is usually when they kick in and just go undefeated for the rest of the season. At the moment, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to do that, but we know things can just suddenly click with Man City, as it has done so many times before. And I'm sure they'll be wanting to keep going and mounting that title challenge. On this game, I think I'd love to say that we're gonna cause an upset, but I just have a feeling that City are just gonna have a little bit too much. I'm gonna be kind. I'm gonna give my team a goal, but I am gonna go 3-1 to Man City. Let's move on to speaking about Leeds now, who take on Brentford. And Leeds currently find themselves sitting in 14th position. But if results don't go well, they could find themselves in the relegation positions by the time all the results are said and done by the end of the weekend. Jesse Marsch seems to be under pressure from the fans. I'm not sure if the same can be said from the board, though. They're continuing to back him in the transfer window, and they're continuing to kind of sign the players that he wants and, is being recommended, and, players that he's worked with before. Although I don't think they've signed one yet, this transfer window that they've worked with before, I've seen some rumours coming out of the players they're targeting, and it does feel that they're going to stick by Marsch, and I don't think he's really quite felt the love yet from the Leeds fans. I don't think there's that natural warmth towards him, and I don't think they fully believe he's going to be the man to continue to keep them up in the Premier League. But at the moment, he's going to stay, and they come up against the Brentford team in incredible form, playing good football. And this is not going to be an easy test for Leeds. You do wonder if Marsch loses this, will pressure start to mount on him from the fans even more? So I've got to give it the away team. I have, with the way that Brentford are playing at the moment. Sorry, Leeds fans, but I've got to give it to Brentford. I'm going to go 3-1 in that scoreline. We move on now to Arsenal taking on Manchester United. And this is another massive, massive game this weekend. Arsenal, of course, if they get the win, one hand already on the trophy? I think so. I think if they get that win over Manchester United, they'll create a nice gap for them. Manchester United, of course, if they do win the midweek game, they could be just 6 points behind Arsenal. But of course, Arsenal will have a game in hand over them. But that doesn't really matter, does it? Because it's all about the mental games. Well, it does matter, but it's about the mental games. Because if Man United can then go and beat Arsenal, it then just shortens it to 3 points, and it really mounts that pressure. It's going to be a difficult task, though, even though Man United are in fantastic, fantastic form. They're going to the Emirates. The Emirates is not an easy place to go, especially this season, and especially with the football that Arsenal are playing. I do think this is going to go to Arsenal, and I do think it's going to be a 2-1 scoreline. I think this is our last prediction, guys. We're finishing off with Fulham taking on Spurs. And Fulham in fantastic, fantastic form. Everyone was questioning at the start of the season, is this going to be the year that Fulham stay up, or are they going to keep doing their yo-yo thing? I'm pretty confident that they're going to stay up now. Currently sitting in 6th position at the time of recording this on 31 points. So they probably just need one more league win this season in the last 18 fixtures that they have to play to keep them up. So yeah, they're going to be in the Premier League, aren't they, next season? And they may even be going into Europe if they keep this form on going. Spurs, they need to pick things up, and this is actually really going to be a close game because depending on how the result goes against Manchester City in the week, Fulham could overtake Spurs come the end of the weekend if they got the win. Spurs, I feel for them, they need some serious investment. I know Conte's coming under criticism, but if you're really looking at it realistically, they're starting the Premier League and they're trying to get in the top 4 with players like Matt Doherty, Sessegnon starting. Their midfield, there's just no creativity. There's nothing in there. They need to try and get like a Modric type player to come in and start to create stuff for them. And you do wonder long term whether this will be the last time that season rather Harry Kane does play in the Spurs shirt. In this fixture, guys, I think it's going to be a close one. I think because Fulham at home, I'm going to go down the middle, 1-1. And that is the Premier League predictions, guys. If you have enjoyed them, as always, please do me a favour. Hit that like button. Please subscribe. And hopefully we'll catch you on another video. Have a good one. Take care. Goodbye.